Hi, I'm Marc Steiner, host of The Marc Steiner Show here on The Real News. If you're watching or listening to this now, we know you appreciate the stories we bring to you. We need your support to continue producing uncompromising, movement-building journalism that reaches ordinary people. We don't accept advertising, sponsorships, or use paywalls. We rely entirely on supporters like you. This is a critical year and a pivotal moment in history. From Paris to Gaza to Baltimore, we're covering it all, but we cannot do it without you. If you feel the urgency of the moment and believe in the importance of independent journalism like TRNN, please donate today at therealnews.com/donate. Thank you for your support. Solidarity forever. Welcome to the Marc Steiner Show here on The Real News. I'm Marc Steiner, and it's great to have you all with us. Now, JD Vance likes to play an Appalachian, but if you read his book, Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of family and culture in crisis, it's more like an attack on the place he claims he's from. He says he speaks for the working class, well, the white working class, but everything he stood for is really dismantling the unions and against what workers fought for, from the Battle of Blair Mountain to the Mine Workers Union to communities throughout Appalachia and what they fought for and achieved for all these decades. So what's happening in Appalachia? There was once the fifth column of the Confederacy, the heart of the Union movement, fiercely independent, a place with a deep culture. What can it tell us about where America is headed? Today we talk about JD Vance and the very struggles of the people of Appalachia with folks who know something about it. Beth Howard was born and raised in Eastern Kentucky, is the Appalachia People's Union Director of Showing Up for Racial Justice, who came up with the slogan Rednecks for Black Lives, and grew up in a rural white community in Eastern Kentucky, where she was also director of Southern Crossroads. And Thurman is the author of Revolutionary Hillbilly, Notes from the Struggle on the Edge of the Rainbow, co-founder of the Young Patriots, which was a radical group in the 60s in Chicago that was in coalition with the Black Panthers, Young Lords, and others, now living and writing and organizing in Huntsville, Alabama. And I must have a disclaimer saying we're friends. Got to put that in there.
Yes.
Known each other for many, many moons. And good to have you all with us.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, great to be here.
So, where do we even begin? Let me get your viewpoint on the man who's running for vice president and claims to be one of y'all.
Yeah, I mean, JD Vance is a grifter. He's an opportunist. He is in the pocket of Peter Thiel and big tech. I am an Eastern Kentuckian, and, he brought in a total sham business that was fueled by venture capitalists called App Harvest, which was supposed to be the answer to our economic woes, which was, giant greenhouses growing tomatoes. And it turned out to be a total sham. He also has holdings in Purdue Pharma, and he has done nothing except use old hillbilly stereotypes to promote eugenics and to try to blame working class white people, people in Appalachia, for the problems that, the ruling class has created, such as the overdose crisis, poverty, and more. And so he's a very dangerous person.
So one thing I want to ask you about what you just said before we turn to High. You said eugenics. What do you mean?
Yes. So when we read excerpts from Hillbilly Elegy, which a friend just shared with me to refresh my memory,
right?
The things he talks about in there are that, Appalachian people are genetically predisposed. Yeah, predisposed.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Thank you. To be lazy, that we don't want to work. And this is the same kind of rhetoric that's been used against other oppressed people, against Black people,
right,
immigrants, right, against the Jewish people. And so, to say that there is just something genetically inherently wrong with us, right, and to completely disregard the systemic issues from his friends in the ruling class that has led to what has happened for generations to us, but to also get us to blame ourselves, to try to, convince us that we're the problem, and so therefore we shouldn't fight back. And so, yeah.
Huh. And High, you like the guy, right?
Yeah, we're big buddies, I tell you. No, well, my take on JD Vance is, he's an opportunist, just like Beth was saying, but he's not a hillbilly. He wants to be portrayed as this savior hillbilly, to explain to people, what the South is really about. He spent very little time actually in the South. He was in Ohio. And I thought his book was terrible. And, he he throws this even the disrespect for his family that he has in the book. I don't I in no way would throw my mother under the bus like he did.
Right.
Even though she has a lot of mental problems, had a lot of, drug addiction, let's don't use that to capitalize just so we can advance, you know. And so I saw that as what he was doing. And, he's supposed to have this great struggle of poverty. I didn't see any poverty that he went through. That was a life of luxury as far as I was concerned, in the way that I was raised, and the way a lot of people in the South are raised. But, people will believe anything, they'll say, here's a dude. And by the way, the reason that I used hillbilly in my book is because he used hillbilly in his book. And I wanted to show that there was a difference between people, hillbillies, you might say, and how one's gone to the right and one's gone to the left. When both of us had some similar experiences, he went to school, got an education. I went to school, got an education, and had to fight for it. And we were both raised in single parent homes, but I didn't see him anywhere as having the struggle that my family would have and a lot of the other poor people in Appalachia have. And my problem with people who sort of fall in line behind him is that they have no real leaders, and we've been put down for so long that there actually are some of the people that will identify with the oppressor, because they have to. And my take on him is he's just a false, phony, misogynistic, racist, that's trying to win over the hearts of other people that will tend to believe him, because Trump didn't bring this, he didn't create this situation of racism and misogynistic. He just brought it down on some people because they were thinking it. And there's some bad education in the South where a lot of people still believe in, the Confederacy. And so, not to get off track, but there's some mentality there, that some people still believe in that because they've been overlooked for so long by the system and used by the capitalist system and taken advantage of, all the way through the coal mining, the timber industry, and just poverty. And so we as organizers, or we as socialists, or we as revolutionaries must counteract what JD Vance is doing and what Trump is doing. And I think we're starting to do that.
So I'm going to get your ideas on and your thoughts and analysis about what has happened to Appalachia, both politically and otherwise. Beth, let me start with you, Beth. I mean, Appalachia has kind of been environmentally destroyed. The coal industry is not what it was. There's been a lot of oppression going on inside of Appalachia. But why do you think, Beth, it seems to have turned right in terms of where politically?
Thanks for the question. It's an important conversation. And, one of the things I like to talk about within this context is, I'm from Kentucky, and so I'll speak as a Kentuckian. A lot of people will say Kentucky is Trump country.
Right. Right.
We're, quote, red state. The facts are that, we last year in the governor's race, which was a very high profile race for our state, we almost, I think it was like 37% of the people voted. And so we are a low voter turnout state. And I think part of this conversation is why are people fed up with politicians, And I think that goes to the root of some of this, is that we have been a place where people for generations, including politicians, have come in and made promises that they never delivered on. And they have sided often with the fossil fuel industry, with big pharma, which led to the overdose crisis. And so a lot of people are disillusioned, but also a lot of the laws in our region really suppress voters. And so, for example, in Kentucky, polls are open 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for very many years. We just now have early voting, and there are so many people who are not allowed to vote because they might have a felony on their record or any number of things. And so they really are working to suppress our votes. But also, I hear a lot of people when I'm door knocking for my community organizing work who will say, like, these politicians come around once a year because they want my vote, and I never hear from them or see them again. And so I think part of this is that people on progressives, liberals, people from center left have often written off Appalachia as this kind of lost cause, as
Right.
not a place worth investing in. And when we do that at our peril. We are kind of writing off this entire region and place where, as you named, throughout history, when we look at uprisings in this country, we are one of the places who have had the fiercest, most militant worker uprisings, right? And we are a place that we are not exclusively white, which is a really important conversation to lift up, that we aren't just white people, we are diverse. At the same time, we are a majority white place in Central Appalachia. And so for a state like Kentucky, that's 85% white, me as a white organizer and other white people, we have to take responsibility for organizing our folks and to make them a better offer than white supremacy, right? And that better offer, I believe, has always been and is an invitation to fight as part of the multiracial working class. And so, I always say we have to be out here talking to people and organizing people, and we have to talk about race specifically, because race will always be used to divide us. And so when we have poor white people, those in power tell us to blame Black people, to blame immigrants, now to blame trans kids, right? And that they're the reason we don't have anything, to keep us from looking up at them. And so I just say we have to talk about race. We have to talk about trans rights. We have to talk about Palestine, because it's to our peril that we don't. And the far right has no problem talking about race. They have no problem talking about their agenda for hurting, trans people, for imperialism. And when we set it out, we just give all of that territory within, the narrative, but also the geographical, like, power building territory to our opponents.
Oh, you said a lot there. I mean, so how do you... So, let's take the places you both live right now, in Appalachia, in different parts. I mean, you're a little further north in Kentucky, and you're further down south, back in Alabama, high. So how do you begin to organize that? How do you begin to organize this multiracial coalition that can turn Appalachia around politically, from the right to fighting for economic and racial justice in America? I mean, how do you think you do that? Because it's been written off, really. I mean, Appalachia's always getting written off. And, let me stop there. I'm curious how you both think you begin to do that. How does that happen?
Well, in Alabama, it's very difficult to organize anything other than a conservative basis because of the history of Alabama. But there are groups of people who are really fighting for the rights of the people here. And one of the things that we're doing is developing similar rainbow coalitions that existed. And we've organized a second rainbow coalition, which is, a nationwide coalition made up of various different racial groups. We also, here in Alabama, what I do is I run a school, which is called North Alabama School for Organizers, in which we just went national in it, but we've been running this about 6 or 7 years. And we'll run various classes for organizers, to train organizers, to get information to people who want to organize, who want to change. But one of the most important aspects of this organizing is people. You generally have to have something to offer people, and sometimes the poor people don't have the opportunity to attend classes, and especially the homeless. Working a lot with the homeless, and so we've developed what we call survival programs that we had with the original Rainbow Coalition. We have a homeless construction coalition in which we get organizations together to literally build structures for the homeless. That way we can figure out more than what they need, and therefore try to get them into the voting block when voting comes up. We have a free automotive clinic in which we fix people's cars so they can get to work, get to school, because a lot of these folks are going to lose their job if they can't get to work.
Right.
Some folks lose their apartment because they have to fix their car. We also have another aspect, which is we've gotten into the entertainment field called Blues to Bluegrass. And what we do is get musicians together to do benefits and to reach people in the community. And so what we want to do is to give people the information that they need to go organize in their own community, to be self-determined toward progressive change. And a lot of people don't know how to do that, or the organizers need additional materials. And we have what's called fireside chats, in which we sit down, and we've had probably 50, 60 fireside chats with individuals across the country where organizers can go in and get information just off of what we had taped, recorded.
Right.
So we do that as well as supporting other causes in the state and all over the country. So being involved in the Democratic National Convention coming up in Chicago, we'll be working with the Poor People's Army and taking, just thousands of people there to.
So you're heading back to Chicago?
Yeah. But yeah, and this we just have to keep educating people. That's all. And we have to get into the rural areas, to talk to people. They're lacking a lot of services that people might get in the city. We're talking about healthcare, and other areas. We're talking about, organizing food pantries, food programs and things like that. So you really have to get to the people where they are and what they need. Instead of talking about it, you have to go out and do it.
So I'm wondering, Beth, to bring you back in here. I mean, if you look at what's happened in Appalachia from north to south, especially the south, injuries come in and kind of really ripped off the place, raked the land over, left people in poverty. Mm-hmm. And so you've got a place now with poverty and drug addiction, economic collapse, healthcare systems falling apart. So Beth, I'm curious how you begin to organize that into a movement.
Yeah.
To really stand up and say, and to pull it out of the grips of this kind of racist right-wing movement that has kind of gotten a stranglehold on the place over the last 20, 30 years.
Yes, absolutely. So, I'm at Showing Up for Racial Justice, and SURJ is a national organization bringing white people into fights for racial and economic justice. And I am the Appalachia director for SURJ. And we take a lot of our approach from inspiration from a brilliant Black woman organizer, Linda Burnham, who after Trump was elected in 2016 said, that poor white people are suffering. And if we are not speaking to their suffering, we know someone else is. And that's right. The far. And so what we are doing in our organizing, I've been a community organizer for 18 years, which is hard to believe that we are, in some ways, I'm always like, let's play the hits, right? Like, let's go talk to people, knock on doors, pick up the phone, and start to listen to people and say, what's going on in your life, right? And Mark, you named some of the things we hear, right? That, my loved one died from an overdose. I can't afford my health care. We can't afford housing. We can't pay our bills. We can't keep food on the table. And so, we take those issues, which are economic issues usually, that are coming up, and we connect on those economic issues across race and across gender, right? Across age. And we start what we call a shared interest campaign around usually an economic issue like housing, which is one of the key issues that we're organizing around in Eastern Kentucky right now. And through that work, we build a multiracial coalition. So I helped start a crew in Eastern Kentucky called the Kentucky People's Union, and I'll use them as an example of how we do this. So we started out doing a listening project. They identified housing as a campaign they wanted to run.
Mm-hmm.
And through that, they keep bringing in more and more tenants and more people in the region who have a stake in housing. And this coalition is now multiracial. Our first meeting, we were like 13 of us and 12 of us were white people. A year later, we had 50 people coming to our community meeting. They're multiracial. It's intergenerational. We have a lot of young trans leaders with people who are older and maybe have never had any significant relationship with anyone who is trans in their lives. And so through this economic issue, we become transformed and our hearts and minds change. Our world gets bigger and our vision gets more like beautiful every day. And, one of the things that we did to really bring white people along around race in Kentucky People's Union is we've used our history. So, learning about the Young Patriots and learning, in High's work, but also learning about, as you mentioned at the top of the call, the miners in the Battle of Blair Mountain, this amazing multiracial group in 1921 of 1,000 miners, immigrants, Black miners and poor white miners. And so, who came together as the Redneck Army and wore these red bandanas around their neck to show their solidarity. And so we tell that story and we actually wear red bandanas. That's our organizing and organizational symbol.
Uh-huh.
And it's a way to call white people into this fight for racial and economic justice without shaming them. We've had this kind of white privilege approach in the larger conversation about whiteness and race for a very long time. And it's a very hard sell to knock on a poor white person's door and say, you've got privilege, right? They're going to slam the door.
Oh, excuse me. I know you're privileged because you're white, but it's insane. It's always That's always bugged me all my years as an organizer. It just makes me nuts. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, when we talk about, the Young Patriots or, the story of the red bandana and that symbol and what those miners did, that calls people into their dignity to say that we have this incredible history of being on the right side of things. And here's this invitation to do it now again, when the stakes could not be, higher. And so that's what Rednecks for Black Lives was, which was a viral essay I wrote in 2020 to call us into our best selves, to say, for one thing, to know that there were so many people like Hi and myself who were already on the right side of this thing, who are, many people are unorganized. They don't have a campaign to belong to. So I think it's offering, an organizing campaign for those folks who are not organized yet, but who's already with us. And then it's creating an invitation for people who are more on the fence or who might be being courted by the far right to have another way of being a working class white person in Appalachia, and to tap into this history.
And you also are one of the things is before we close out and we come back to High as well, that you really want to revive the term redneck and own it.
Yes, absolutely. So similarly to how High said he strategically, reclaimed hillbilly and said,
right.
Named his book Hillbilly, a revolutionary hillbilly. Yeah, we are reclaiming redneck to, it has, multiple origin stories maybe, but, one of the thing we're most proud of and one that has been so hidden from us because it's so dangerous is this story of the Redneck Army. And so, yeah, we are reclaiming it. We're being loud and proud. And, poor white people, poor white Southerners, we've been rowdy, we're a little bit ready to scrap, a little rebellious. Yeah. So we don't want to get rid of that, but we want to use that for the right reasons. And so I think really tapping into that multiracial working class solidarity is the way to put it to good use.
That's really important. How you about to say what? I can hear you about to say something.
Well, I have a quote here that really hit home to me when I was writing this book, and I found it on it's called Rainbow Pie, a memoir of Redneck America. And it says that the United States has always maintained a white underclass whose role in the greater scheme of things has been to cushion national economic shocks through the disposability of their labor, with occasional time off to serve as bullet magnets in the defense of the empire. You know, so the system needs us. They have to have us. They don't want us to get ahead, you see. But at the same time, they don't want us to realize that, you know, that when Beth goes up and tries to talk to poor people, they want those poor people to say, I'm not poor. You know, I got my big screen TV, I got my phone, you know, I got my car, you know, and the guy down the street, you know, who might own a company or something, he's got the same thing. He's got a little bit better things, but I got what he's got, you know?
Right.
And therefore, I'm not poor, okay? When in actuality, they are poor because it goes all the way back to the 70s when Wall Street and the government and everybody else became convinced that they could give poor people credit. And they've used that as a weapon against the poor people since then. And that's part of the problem, is convincing people, you know, and this is where the Poor People's Campaign that's going on now has a lot of trouble because people do not want to admit that they're poor. Okay, so we have to do a lot of work, a lot of convincing because of the connotation that's been put on that word over the years, whereas in the 60s and 70s, people said, yeah, well, I'm poor. Let's go with the Poor People's Army campaign and let's go to Washington. Let's go do this. You don't see that now, you know.
So as we conclude, I'm very curious about a couple of things. One is how hopeful you are that things can shift in places like Appalachia. You know, I was thinking about years ago, I mean, my experience with you all in Chicago and Resurrection City, high back in the 60s, the Rainbow Coalition, my own organizing in South Baltimore in the early 70s, where we brought black and white working class communities across the line together to fight against slumlords and inside unions. I'm thinking about the Mississippi timber workers, which brought black and white workers together in Mississippi. I remember that. But those things came, organizations didn't remain, and I just where you both think the future lies and how you organize something across racial lines to put up a fight for a different kind of America in places like where you all live. And I'm going to let you go first very quickly and then slide right over to Beth and let her take us out for the day anyway.
First of all, I think we can't be afraid to approach people. You know, I see people that's afraid to approach people and talk to them about it, you know, when they may have different views. And this is exactly where we need to be. It's talking to these people. You know, I was at a rally where some high school kids came with Trump signs. And I'm like, you know, okay, we need to talk to these kids, you know. I mean, let's go talk to them. So a couple of us grabbed some, you know, Poor People's Campaign literature and went over and talked to them and handed it out to them. You know, we have to educate them, okay? We have to have more people getting into Appalachia. And we have to develop other people in Appalachia, as Beth was saying, as organizers. But the Appalachians have to make their own decision. You know, I can't make decisions about the Native American, the Black, or Hispanics. I can only try to get involved with the white people and try to change them. And I got to understand that that's where I'm coming from and that's what I have to do. You know, so I see a future eventually, and I'm never going to give up on the dream, that we can make changes there and we can have equality there. And, you know, the people in Appalachia can have the same, you know, equality as the rest of the people in this country. So, you know, one time we had talked about in the Young Patriots to separating Appalachia and making its own state.
Right. I remember all that. Yep.
Yeah. And you know, I still see that all the times, but I don't think it's going to happen. But what I'm saying is I'm a revolutionary. I don't think the revolution is going to happen in my lifetime because of my age, I guess. But it could happen, you know, in my grandkids' lifetime or something like that. That's what I'm hoping, because we just have to pass on the buck. We just have to keep doing it.
We can't stop. And Beth, let me let you help us round this out. One of the things I was thinking about was JD Vance and his Hillbilly Elegy, as opposed to a hillbilly revolution, a hillbilly rising up, which is some of the stuff I think you're working on.
Yes, absolutely. You know, I think for me, how do I keep that vision and hope alive? You know, I love my people more than anything in the world. I couldn't be more proud to be where I'm from. And I think that for lots of us, when we hear people talk about us, they're usually looking down on us. And it's usually not us having the microphone or a voice to be heard. And I think what I want to do and what I think can help us, have this Appalachia uprising and this beautiful future is to treat people with kindness, to see our dignity, and to create opportunities for us to organize and to be involved. And I think about my own family. So I'm the daughter of a small family tobacco farmer, and someone who worked in surface mining and strip mining, my dad. My mom was a grocery store clerk and then a factory worker. And, someone asked me if my dad was in a union, and I said, no, this was the Reagan 80s, right? They were broken by the time my dad was mining, but I know he would have been a union miner. And my friend who's a union organizer said, oh, well, he was unorganized. And that really stayed with me because nobody came and knocked on our door. No one came to his workplace to organize him or organize my mom's factory. And what might our lives have been like if that had happened? And so I have kind of made it as one of my purposes in my life, along with other people in this region, is to give people the opportunity to knock on their door, to call them and invite them into something beautiful, not in spite of being an Appalachian, but because they are. Because we have such a high stake in a multiracial working class winning this world we deserve.
That's beautiful, and that's a great way to close out our conversation. And we'll continue this conversation because I think the work you're all doing in Appalachia is really critical to the future. And Beth Howard, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and really, and I've been reading your stuff, and I'm excited to have more conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And so grateful to be here with you, Hi. I have I owe so much to Hi and the Young Patriots. So I want to say that in public as much as I can.
And I echo that. Hi Thurman is a dear friend and a comrade and a brother, man. I'm glad you could join us today as well. And you're not going to stop fighting until you draw your last breath. That I know.
That's right, because I don't look at myself as being old. I'm just chronologically gifted. So it just keeps being given to me, and I just keep taking it. But I would like to say that Beth, I just is very special to me. And wow, I'm not sure. You're my tutor, okay?
We got each other.
Really, that's right. And Mark, you're a great guy. It's good to always talk to you.
Always good to talk to you. So Beth Howard, Hi Thurman, thank you both so much for being with us today on the Marc Steiner Show. Let's keep the struggle going, and we will continue our conversations together. And maybe time to take a trip down through Appalachia and get some stories done.
Love that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much.
All power.
Once again, thank you to Beth Howard and Hi Thurman for joining us today, and for all the work they do organizing cross-racial working class solidarity in Appalachia. And thanks to David Hebden for running the program today, and audio editor Alina Nulick, and the tireless Kayla Rivara for making it all work behind the scenes, and everyone here at The Real News for making the show possible. Please let me know what you thought about what you heard today, what you'd like us to cover. Just write to me at mss@therealnews.com, and I'll get right back to you. Once again, thank you, Beth Howard and Hi Thurman, for joining us today, and we will bring you more stories about the fight to build interracial working class coalitions in Appalachia and across the country. So for the crew here at The Real News, I'm Marc Steiner. Stay involved, keep listening, and take care.
Thank you so much for watching The Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please, tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to The Real News Network. Solidarity forever.